Okay, now we can go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone for coming today. Our guest today is Dr. Nico Setiawan, who received his bachelor's degree at UK in chemical engineering and then subsequently graduated from the PhD program at the College of Pharmacy in 2018. While he was completing the PhD program, he participated in a 2-month summer internship at Merck, and he currently serves as senior research scientist in materials science and particle engineering at Amory in West Lafayette, Indiana. So current 4th-year graduate student Rupinder Kaur is going to lead today's conversation with Dr. Setiawan. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Nico, for making the time to meet with us.
Sure thing. It's a pleasure.
So I'm going to ask you about your current role, and we'll go through some of that, and then we'll work our way forward again chronologically, starting with graduate school and exactly how you got to your current position, if that sounds good.
Yep, sounds good.
So how would you describe your average day or week?
Yeah, I would say it's about 50-50 between lab work and data analysis, and the other 50% would be the report writing and client call, and just reading for my own career, I guess, advancement. So it's about equal amount of lab work and data analysis and the administration side of it.
How has COVID affected that?
We're so fortunate that it hasn't affected us that much. Of course, we do have to wear all PPE, mask, and social distancing and all that. But actually, for the most part, we're still on site. We did last year split the shift into 2, so it was like 50% of the people on the site working in the morning shift, and then the other half are working on the afternoon shift. But at this point, we're kind of a mixture where most people work during the day, but there are still people that work in the afternoon. But for those like IT, for example, that can absolutely do all their work from home, they do work from home. So it hasn't affected us that much. As far as projects coming in, really they haven't changed that much. I mean, there's still many projects coming in. So we, at our side, we don't really do work closely with COVID per se, but our company, I believe, either in Mississippi or Missouri or Wisconsin, I believe either one of them helps with the manufacturing of one of the COVID vaccines. So as a company, in the broader sense, we do help with the COVID production, or COVID vaccine production rather, but at our site, we don't have any close related projects to COVID.
What are some projects that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so one of the projects that I'm currently working on is actually attempting crystallization on a material that this client has that is amorphous. So it's such an irony, if you will, because back in grad school, the big theme of my project is to maintain amorphicity of different drugs and try to avoid crystallization at all costs. So it's like the complete opposite of what I did in grad school. So it's been interesting to see just the different side of the projects or different side of the science, if you will, and just learning a lot on different ways to crystallize amorphous materials and why crystallinity is actually good for processing. So one of the things that benefits the process chemistry through crystallization is that you get a better purity. So when you can crystallize something, actually you can reject more impurity. So that's like one of the benefits or crystallizing a material, whereas in grad school, we tried all kinds of ways to avoid crystallization because we want to maintain such a high exposure to the body. So it's just a different side of the science or drug delivery or drug development that you're working on, and it's just neat to see both sides of it. So that's one. The other one that I'm currently working on is controlled crystallization for improved filtration rate. So this client, throughout their process, they were able initially produce sort of big particles in their process, but then lately the particles that they're generating are not very amenable for filtration. So it takes them a long time to filter material. So they came to us and try to see what are some of the things that impact the particle size and particle shapes, and therefore how we can improve the filtration rate. So that's some of the things that I'm currently working on. And if you guys have any questions, while I'm speaking, so feel free to ask with specifics.
Do you think having done that graduate work on maintaining amorphicity has helped inform the current work you're doing with trying to get better crystallization, or do you think it really wouldn't have made a difference and it's just an ironic coincidence?
Yeah, and by saying ironic, I don't mean that to say that it wasn't useful at all. If anything, it's actually very beneficial. So yes, it has been useful. It's just that it's a little bit different in the way that you attack the problem. So in grad school, we focus on mainly stopping or avoiding crystallization when you deliver the drug product into your body. And therefore you think about the different ways that physiologically impact crystallization that way, whereas one of the projects that I'm working on right now, where we attempt crystallization, is more of the upstream process where they try to synthesize this molecule, but this molecule somehow just doesn't want to crystallize. So, there's no physiological component to it, but of course, we have to think about, what are different ways that we could induce crystallization to the amorphous material. So the reason that I bring this up, the irony that I bring up is so that, or at least like for me, I think it would have been beneficial for me to think that, my graduate project is not the only thing in the world. There are so many things that I could learn. So for example, like, what do people do on the other side of my research that I could learn from? So, crystallization is not all bad, and what are some of the things that crystallization could be good, and so I'm just bringing that up as a reason to expand your horizon, if you will. Does that make sense?
No, it does, definitely. Yeah, we do get into a silo of this is the most important problem in the field right now, and you get sucked in on it for 4 years, and then you leave and you're like, wait, just all these other problems that are also the most important problems.
Certainly, though, it's an important problem, but yes, I think expanding your horizon is a really good thing to do as well.
So in your graduate work, can you describe some specific things that really helped you advance to the next stage?
Yeah, I would say some of the classes that I took. So, for example, the solid state chemistry that Dr. Munson taught. I don't know who is teaching that now, but that and kinetics and ionic equilibria chemistry, for example, those fundamentals are not going anywhere, regardless of what you do in your future. Those are, those could be applicable just about anywhere. So the science, the fundamentals don't change really. With regards to the some of the instrumentals, I am glad to have done HPLC. HPLC is used just about everywhere, and so if you can get your hands on that, that would be one skill that would be beneficial. And I also did some spectroscopy. I didn't do NMR myself. I got help, but still understanding the basics of it and just how you read NMR, for example, as well as X-ray. I did have some hands-on experience on X-ray and some of the thermal instrumentation like PGA and DSC. And those are just regular instrumentation that pharma companies use everywhere. So those are really beneficial. And in terms of the project, again, yes, I may not be working on a project that exactly is what I did in grad school per se, but some of the skills, some of the understanding of just supersaturation and amorphicity, crystallization, those are still the same, right? Regardless of whether you want to avoid crystallization or you want things to crystallize out, the fundamentals, again, don't change. So I think those are some of the things that I could think of right now.
Can you describe your internship at Merck while you were in graduate school and how that contributed to your graduate training and any applications or benefits it had after graduate school as well?
Yeah. So my internship was mainly we focused on working on a technique that would allow them that would be used as part of their screening tools, if you will. So what we developed was side-by-side diffusion cell, and some of you, I think I saw Heather and Freddie there, so they're familiar with that technique. But so the main focus of my internship was to develop that as part of their screening tools for future drug development. So one of the things that we're trying to get at that is when we develop a drug product, do we get the sort of the level of exposure that we think we're getting? So that was lacking in their screening tools. Before having that tool, what they did was they based off exposure based on their solubility profile. So for some formulation, you could increase solubility, but then what they observe is, before I move on to that, what I mean is, based on the solubility, they think that solubility correlates to exposure. So for example, if I add a solubilizer, that would hopefully, I would think that translates to high exposure. Whereas, recently leading up to that year when I did internship, there are so many papers and publications that talk about solubility not necessarily translating to high exposure. So why is that? So that's sort of like the background into why we developed the side-by-side diffusion cell as part of the characterization or screening tool. And how that prepared me, or how that helped my graduate study, I mean, that's like basically the meat of my my dissertation. So definitely it was a big part of my dissertation, and just understanding the activity of the drug as you formulate this in with solubilizers, as well as the drug gets delivered into the intestine, and as it's solubilized by some naturally occurring surfactant as well. How do you know how much or what level of exposure you're getting? And so that's sort of what we got out of it. As far as how it translates to my position now, I think definitely having an internship at Merck, and I'm not sure if having an internship specifically at Merck would, help the students to get a future job easier, but I think having an internship in general really did help me. But I think specifically at Merck, I think there is a I don't know what the word is, but just some sort of greater weight into that. And so I was fortunate enough to have done an internship at Merck that allowed me to have an opportunity here at Amory. So does that answer your question, Rupinder?
It does, yes. We've had a couple alumni that have had interesting circumstances or events occur during their graduate work. I know you have to switch between PIs at one point. Do you want to talk about that and how and what kind of things really helped you excel despite those events?
Sure. So I started graduate school in 2012, and then for 3 years I was under Dr. Paul Bummer, who passed away in 2015, and so I had to be in another lab, and it just so happened that that same year, or maybe the following semester, that Dr. Marzek came from Merck, and so that just happened to work out well in terms of the transition of it. But I think the things that helped me excel in that transition were, well, one, I think just the hunger to learn. And by that, I mean, you would read papers and ask questions, ask professors, ask your colleagues about just different, try to understand what people do, and try to see how their perspective could help you in your research. And I think too, I think having hard professors like Dr. Anderson really helped me in just being a good scientist. So it really doesn't matter who your advisor is. And I know it does matter who your advisor is. Don't get me wrong, but I think what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter if you have those fundamentals, if you have those hunger and just the background of having gone through hard challenges that professors give you. I think those would set you up well. So I'm really thankful for, hard professors like Dr. Anderson, Dr. Munson, and Marsek that really prepared me well for those things.
What's something else you wish someone had told you before you finished your graduate studies?
Just one thing?
Many things.
Yeah, I'm not sure if somebody necessarily didn't tell me this, but I wish I had paid attention a little more, is read. So yeah, I think reading is very, very important. And I remember that, I can't remember if it was my first committee meeting, it might have been, but I remember Dr. Anderson just laid up, this hammer in front of me, that, you just need to read. And so I wish I took on that challenge much better in grad school, but it's something that I, have been remembering and have been trying to do even like right now. So there is no end to reading. So even after you finish grad school, make sure that is a habit that you keep on doing.
And so when you did finish graduate school, what were some strategies that you were using to find your next position, and how did you end up as a research scientist at Amory?
Yeah, that's a good question. I used just about different search engines, from just Googling it up, or LinkedIn, or Indeed, just some of the the useful search engines to look for a job. So I didn't really do anything special with regards to that, or but I did have quite a bit of people network in different companies, and I got to know those folks from conferences mostly. So if you are able to go to AAPS, for example, and I know that with COVID it's a little bit different now, but take advantage of going through conference, as well as, I'm not sure if you and Katina still set up the Alumni mentorship program, but that is also helpful. I'm still in touch with my mentor actually still, so that's also beneficial. But yeah, I didn't really do any special things with regards to the search engine that I use, but in terms of the jobs, this might be different for different folks. So I typed in specific things that I want to do that are relevant to my research. So for example, instead of typing in scientist, for example, I did type in formulation scientist, or let's see, what else? For example, like if you want to apply to the kind of job that I'm doing right now, crystallization or solid state chemist would be another keyword, other keywords that you can type in the search engine. So, but yeah, in terms of the search engines, I just use the common ones. But I think the keyword is what you want to sort of use to sift out all the different jobs that you don't want.
Do you have any?
It does,
yeah. Do you have any words of advice for interviews and things to really watch out for before deciding a position that you want to take?
are you talking about initially when you first applying for the job, or are you talking about after having gone through several rounds of interview and you get the offer?
Let's do the first question first, and then after several rounds of interview.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, the first one, that is an interesting question. So I would say, there's quite a bit of difference between big pharma versus CRO. Obviously, Amory is a CRO, contract research organization, and that's quite a bit different than Merck, for example, that I intern at. So you have to make a decision, right, whether big pharma is for you or CRO is more for you. And I know that sometimes it's a bit hard to figure out how well you work in either one of those or which one you really want before you actually have the experience in it. And I get that, but I think you do have a lot of people, a lot of connections, right, through the alumni or through other networks from AAPS, for example, that you can talk to and just ask, like, what is day-to-day in a CRO or a big pharma is like, and decide whether it's something that you want to do. And I think let's see, with application, also the other thing that I wanted to mention is if you apply, especially for a position at a CRO, I would say check this thing called 483 FDA. It's available online. It's basically a database where FDA gives a red flag for a company if they do not comply with FDA regulations. So, if you say there's so many companies out there, right? So, for example, the big ones, I'm less worried about. Usually they're, even though they're in the 483, usually those are minor things. But like for smaller companies that you don't quite, or you can't get quite the information about, you want to check 483 FDA list. You can Google it exactly like that, and it will show you all the list of companies. And if the companies mention a lot, then I would, I would give it a little bit of reservation before you go forward in your application. But I think, did you have any question, Rupinder, about it?
No, I was just nodding, saying yes.
Okay. So that's one. And the other thing is, just Google their profile, the company profile, how big the company is, how long the company has been around, and they usually have leadership names available, and if you can check out their names on Google Scholar and see how many publications they have. Those are available, and you can decide for yourself whether, right? So, for example, if you want to apply for a position that will help you learn a lot for the next many years, then, right, you can see whether or not this person or somebody in that company has been publishing or has had a track record of publishing until recently. So that's something that you can do as well. But as for the second one, once you've gone through several interviews and they give you an offer, and you have to decide whether or not you take the job. I mean, it really depends as well. If that's your only option, then you may have to lean to get a job, to take the job. But I think if you have the opportunity to talk to your future colleagues. And I think companies don't mind if you ask for a time for that and just ask, the potential colleagues of, what are the things that you like best and what are some of the things that you don't like the most about the company, and just find out, what it is like working in that company. So I think location is also the other one that you want to look at. Obviously, there are so many jobs on both coasts, East and West Coast, but I'm in Indiana and it's Midwest, so the pay may not be as great as the coast, but I have a lot more flexibility, for example, within the time and pay that I have. So it's something that you have to just think about, and I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to your preference.
So can you describe some obstacles you faced during your transition from graduate school to being a research scientist at Amory?
Yeah, one of the things that that I learned a lot when I first started my professional career is, I would say, the GMP side of things, so good manufacturing practices, and just what it means to be compliant, what it means to document things. And I know that as a student, you guys have your own lab notebook, and you document things, which is all great, good experience, but there is, at least when I was there at UK, and not that, I'm trying to bash you guys or anything like that, but there's not really, you can call it accountability, if you will, within the documentation that I had, for example. So nobody countersigned, nobody checked on my work, so there's not much of accountability that way. So whether or not I have documented thoroughly, right, it's something that nobody else knows. But at a professional level, there is accountability, there is counter signature, there is review for every part that you do. So that is something that it's I don't know if I wanted to call it an obstacle, but it's something that I didn't really think much about until until I started my work or my job, and it just dawned on me the level of accountability that FDA requested of companies, which is a really good thing.
And what are some the soft skills that helped you in that transition?
The transition from grad school to professional level.
Yeah, right.
I assume.
So did you, which skills did you think you were relying on heavily? I know you had several leadership experiences while in grad school. Did you find those beneficial? Overall communication?
Yeah, definitely both of those. The leadership is beneficial. So at my role right now, I don't have anyone reporting to me, but I did have several folks reporting to me in my previous role, and that was a good soft skill to have that I could develop in grad school, and Communication is another thing. And I think communication is something that, I will learn forever. But it's such an important skill to have, just to be able to communicate, what you're thinking to the client or whoever it is that you want to communicate to, and just clarity in speaking is something that I continue to learn up till this point even. So that's also important. I would say the other thing is just hunger to learn. I remember like when I first started this job, the first 3 months were like the training period. There are some people that try to figure out on their own first, right, for some time before they ask people. And not that that's wrong. I think that's a really good thing to be able to think independently. But I am on the mindset of, well, if it takes me more than a couple hours to figure out on certain things, of course, there are other things like reading papers, for example, that could take you days to figure out. But if it's something that I have to get done soon, but I can't figure out in a couple hours, then I just go ask people. I don't have shame in that regard, and I would encourage you to do the same. Just ask people. There are so many other people that know more than I do, and that I could definitely learn from. So just hunger to learn and not be ashamed in asking people that way.
So in 2019, then you transitioned into senior research scientist at Amory. What kind of qualified that transition?
So you mean from my initial position, you mean?
Right, going from research scientist to research senior, or sorry, from research scientist to senior research scientist. What were milestones that had to be reached, and how did you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think partly is leadership. So when I was promoted into the senior research scientist, I was assigned with leading junior scientists. Most of them were bachelors, so just stepping back from sort of doing the lab work myself into directing them. And so there are so many facets of leadership that I learned from that. So I think one of them is it's easy to and faster to do it myself, for example, but then, right, I had to learn to trust people. And not that I had problem with trusting people, it's just that, right, there are fears of, well, what if this person makes mistakes or that, but I think just trusting the system of mentorship, mentoring other people, I think it really panned out. So that's one. The other one is, I think, just being more, be the person that can answer questions. So meaning when you have, or after you graduate from your PhD level, you're expected to be, some sort of expert in something, and so that's like also part of the expectation that I have, is to be able to answer, clients' questions and also present data to clients, and so more responsibility, more dependent on you to answer questions that way.
And outside of graduate school, how have mentors helped shape your career?
So yeah, mentors are, I think I think one of the things that I have found most helpful to me is just the encouragement that I have been getting from my mentors. So one in particular, he works out in California, and he just has such a high hunger to learn, and I really appreciate that about him. And so just an encouragement, and just hearing him learning, different things in research, and just the projects that he has, I think has been a really encouraging thing to me. Does that answer your question, Rupinder?
And can you describe? It does. More specifically, I guess, have like you had also mentioned the importance of a network, both in transitioning out of graduate school and across different roles. How have you specifically used that network?
I mean, I'm trying to find ways to answer that question, but I think mostly I just stay in touch with them. So not necessarily, I guess one application that I have is to ask different folks if they knew about this person. For example, if a candidate is applying and from this company, right, you could ask, you could utilize that connection. Or I also have a friend at Purdue here that is graduating, and he's applying for a position, or he applied for a position at AbbVie, and I happen to have a number of folks that I know at AbbVie, so I've introduced this student to them. So mostly I've not used it for myself, other than just staying in touch and finding out what they're doing, or how they're doing, that kind of thing. But I've used it to connect others in terms of getting a job or finding out about specific people that way. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question now?
It does. Okay. And then lastly, before we turn it over to any questions that the audience has, how has your work-life balance changed throughout your career?
I am enjoying my current position right now, just because of the high flexibility. So some of you might know that I have a 6-month-old right now, and but it's been great to live like 5 minutes away from work, and been able to spend lunchtime with my family, and if my wife or my son ever needs anything, they're not that far away from me. So I think the high flexibility in my schedule right now is something that I value a lot. But even in grad school, I would say grad school is a little bit different. I think you go home and you still read papers, right? So you don't really separate yourself from work. But grad school was a lot of fun because I was able to make a lot of friends that way, and so you don't feel like you're going through the hardship or the challenges in life yourself. Now I do have some friends outside of work. I do have few friends that I stay in touch at work, but mostly outside of work. But yeah, I've been enjoying my work-life balance in my position right now. So again, going back to the location and the kind of job that you have, I think it's something that that I would encourage you guys to think about. So don't ever discount working at in a Midwest area because it's not as big of a company or not the latest cutting edge science, if you will. Not that those things are bad. I'm not encouraging or discouraging you from applying to the coast, but it's just preference, right? At the end of the day, and with science, you could also read, and you can read just about anywhere, and you don't necessarily have to have a certain job to be able to keep up with the science. So it's something that you can do whether you're at work or independently yourself.
Thank you for all of the advice and all of the questions that you've answered. Is there a question that I have not asked you yet that you feel I should have?
Out of the list that you sent me, I think there's one question: how have you seen the field evolve in your time? How has it stayed constant? I want to say that the field, there's more focus on large molecule, and it's something that I didn't do in grad school, and still don't have quite enough experience for that. So it's something that is, you could say, evolving to that. But again, how has it stayed constant? If you're fundamentally strong, right, scientifically, it could be applied to a lot of places. So whether it's large molecule or small molecule, and not that there is not enough enough complexity with large molecule that you can just pick it up that same day or anything like that. But there is a lot of different challenges with large molecule that you don't see with small molecule. But what I'm trying to say is the science still, right, stays the same. So equilibrium is still the same, kinetic is still the same. So the application of it is different. So yeah, stay focused on the fundamentals, and you'll be okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If we don't have any questions, I don't want to keep you longer than we have to. You've already dedicated so much of your time to us, and I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's so good to catch up with you guys, and you have my email, and feel free to, for any other students, whether they're here in this chat or not, if they have other questions that they didn't get to this talk, then they feel free to email me right away. Or if you have, positions that we have that interest you, let me know. I could certainly help you with that. Or if you see other positions at other companies that I could potentially help you connect with somebody over there, which, right, I've done similar thing with my friend here at Purdue. I would certainly be happy to do that too. So yeah, use the alumni connection a lot. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. And not just me. I believe other alumni would be happy to hear from you as well.
Definitely. Rosa, Katina, do you guys have any final words before we let Nico go?
Hey, Nico, it's so great to hear your voice.
so good to talk to you guys. You guys doing okay?
Yeah, doing fine. Your little George is so cute. Oh my gosh. I'm sure you and Sarah are amazing parents. I don't know if grad school prepared you for fatherhood, but
all those exam and the committee meetings, you know, help me in some ways with fatherhood, right? With staying up all night and feeding the baby is a different application, but it still worked out.
well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Nico, and for offering to help our students when they're ready to be job searching. I know that we'll definitely take you up on that when the time comes for different people who are
Sure.
going to graduate soon. So thank you again.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. It's good talking to you guys.
Good talking to you. Right. Have a great day.
Okay. You too. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Nico.
Thank you.
All right.